Hello, everyone. Richard here from Calvin Wazoo again, bringing you another video. And this is another video about vinyl in the mail. This one is about an album that arrived, a few days ago, and I wanted to listen to it and think about it and provide a fuller response and description of my reaction to it than maybe some other videos that I've done. And I think I'm ready. The album is the debut album by Troye Sivan, Blue Neighborhood. Um, it's a double album of which three of the four sides are devoted to a main theme or story. A little background about Troy. He was born in South Africa, but then his family immigrated to Australia. So that's where he was, primarily raised. And this was his debut album, and it's a double album, so that's pretty significant for a debut. Not many artists can do that, and it did really well. In fact, it became a gold album in the U.S., in Australia, and New Zealand, and Taiwan, which is not surprising about Taiwan because of the style of music. That style of music is pretty popular, and the style is kind of, rhythm and blues. Now, I'm not a big fan of what I call, white boy rhythm and blues. I just view a lot of artists with suspicion, Anglo artists who go into the R&B field. Uh, there are some really good ones. I'm not saying that they're all prepackaged, marketed, products, but a lot of them are, and it's kind of an appropriation of the genre. So I'm always kind of skeptical uh, when a white boy singer is doing the R&B stuff. And in with Troy's particular case, he's really primarily a singer and a songwriter, but he doesn't, as far as I can tell and what I've kind of looked up, he doesn't have an instrument. It's not like he plays the piano or plays guitar. And that's kind of an issue with this release for me. But, let's get to my initial responses. I was intrigued by this release when I saw the videos in YouTube. There's like a trio of videos that are taken from this album. And so the general theme is, I don't know if I want to call it unrequited love, and it would be unrequited same-sex love. And it's not quite unrequited, I guess, because the object of affection being described in the songs is not returning the affection. There's just other more complicated issues going on, which the videos portray very readily, but are also inferred within the lyrics of the songs. Now, it's supposed to be fictional romance, and the lyrics are very strong and very heartfelt. So while perhaps the particular object of affection being described in the songs is fictional, I don't know for a fact, this is my presumption, but I do feel like Troy is singing from the heart, from experience, in some degree or another. What's kind of interesting too about this release, um, he's 24 now, Sivan is, but he was only about 20 when this album was produced and released. And again, the lyrical content is very, not just introspective, but very observant of the world around the main character in these songs, and is spoken with a maturity that is not just, it arises from experience. So again, while the actual love object in the songs is supposed to be fictional, I do believe that there's some real life angst and borderline feelings of rejection that cannot simply be made up. One of the songs is called Talk Me Down, which in the video shows Troy in a very desperate state of mind, standing at the edge of this cliff overlooking the ocean. And it's kind of an open ended song. And when that video was released, there was also a lot of material and information connected with it for suicide prevention. And that is a very big issue, particularly with young gays, adolescent and young adult gays, is these feelings of isolation and this feeling of unreciprocated affection and love, from a love object, or tensions that build between the two because of the pressure the person is feeling from society around them. This feeling that I cannot act or I cannot pursue this love as something enduring. I can't do it. And you see that in some of the video that goes with the video trilogy and the ones about this song. So the album begins somewhat optimistic, but you can sense and feel the fear, with the songs, coming up with Wild, and Bite, which a song about affection, and wanting to be kissed, but please don't bite. So there's that double entendre going on, that, yes, to use a cliche, love hurts. And often it's going to hurt because of an intentional act by the other, or even by oneself towards the other. What was interesting to me, and this is one criticism I have of the album, I think Troy's lyrics, his storytelling, is really, really exceptional, really, really quite good. His voice also works really well with the material, with what he is singing about, because as the album proceeds, the hopefulness and fear that you sense in the beginning starts to turn into bitterness and anger and resentment toward the end of the third side, as the narrator of the album is coming to realize that his object of affection, this other boy, is not going to commit to him for whatever reason. Now, in the video, it shows a tense relationship between the other boy and the boy's father, and that and then he marries or goes off with a girl, leaving the narrator or Troy sort of in the cold. And that's where you begin to see the despondency set in, ultimately leading up to that song of "Talk Me Down," which is probably right around the midpoint of the story because it's on side 2 toward the end. There are still other songs on side 3 or the C side that I still believe are connected with the larger story. Side 4 is pretty much the songs they're standalone, or there's a remix of Wild, which is the opener. But side 4, yeah, is kind of a standalone. The whole story is going through side 3. In general, as I was saying, there was high praise. The album did really well. One critic, however, was a little bit harsh, I thought, in reviewing the album, saying that that in lieu of originality, Sivan sells vulnerability. So he was dinging Sivan on the originality issue. Maybe that's musically he was speaking, because again, lyrically, there's not a lot of material out there that really focuses honestly and takes a deep look at same-sex attraction, particularly among young people. So I don't know exactly where that critic was coming from. I do have my own criticism about the production of the album. I think the production is a little on the heavy-handed side, because the instrumentation tends to overwhelm, I think, Troy's voice and his storytelling through song. And I think that again comes back to that I don't think Troye Sivan, has an instrument other than his voice. Because when you think of other singer-songwriters and their albums, the production is a little more Spartan, so that performer's voice and whatever their accompanying instrument is shines and goes through, and whatever other production is involved is there as support. You think of like Tracy Chapman's debut, for example, which I thought a lot about while listening to this. And Troy does mention that an influence was Amy Winehouse, and I can see that in his singing and in his songwriting and storytelling. But again, the production with these other artists wasn't quite as heavy-handed, and I feel like the people and whoever produced the songs varies from song to song. There's a couple who are doing it consistently, but not every song is produced and engineered by the same individuals. But that same heavy-handedness comes through, and to me, it kind of suppresses Troy's voice and storytelling. I like the album, and I've been continuing to listen to it, and it is growing on me more, because, as I said, I do have sort of a prejudice against white boy rhythm and blues, and I think Troy has something going on with this. This is a really, really incredible debut album, and the cover artwork, really fits into that idea. The blue neighborhood. It's also very very pristine and middle class neighborhood. Um, the Some other production issues. So I mean, it's nice insert that comes in here, and it's got the lyrics of the songs. But my God, look at this tiny, tiny, tiny print. I mean, it's I'm 61 years old, and it's pretty hard for me to read the lyrics. Um, but it's not like you need to have the lyrics because his singing is clear, his enunciation is clear, his voice is strong. I just keep coming back to the instrumental production on this is just too much. He needed to be restrained and pulled back a little bit so that his voice would be forward. And I just sometimes, the bass sometimes just really covers it up, covers his voice up almost to a point where you almost can't hear him. That's a little bit of hyperbole, but nonetheless, I do believe that's over the top, a little heavy handed. Some interesting things. He also was an actor. He was in the X-Men Origins film. He was the young James Howlett in that. And then more recently, he was in Boy Erased. That's a 2018 film. And he portrayed Gary. And it's been a while since I've seen that film. I saw it when it first came out. So it's been a couple of years since I watched it. But I remember him now. I can picture him. And that was an interesting character, and he did a very good job in that role. So, in general, I agree with a lot of the other high praise that this release got. I just kind of wish, maybe somebody will come back and remaster it and kind of pull back some of that instrumentation and let his voice go through. So there it is. Blue Neighborhood. This was a really, really strong debut for Troye, especially when you consider that it's a double album. That's a very ambitious debut to pull off. And he pulled it off. I'm happy with this being in my collection. What are your thoughts? Please leave comments in the Down Under. And also share the video, please. And I hope that, I really would like to see some comments from people, especially if you are someone familiar with Troye Sivan. I have not heard any of his subsequent material. This was the one that piqued my interest initially. So yeah, leave some comments in the Down Under. And as always, remember to enjoy your music.